Most men have no idea what actually happens inside a woman's mind when a man suddenly pulls back. They assume she doesn't care. They assume she barely notices. They assume the silence affects only them. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Because when you withdraw your energy, not out of anger, not out of manipulation, but out of calm, grounded self-control, something deep, instinctive, and almost involuntary happens inside her psychology. Something she will never confess, something she feels long before she understands why. A woman expects your attention. She expects your consistency. She expects your emotional presence. Whether she's fully committed or just exploring possibilities, she becomes accustomed to the way you show up. She relies on the rhythm of your energy, even if she pretends she doesn't need it. So when you suddenly shift that rhythm, when you pull back, when you stop giving her the emotional nourishment she once took for granted, her entire internal world changes. This is the moment where her truth appears. At first, she may act unaffected. She may maintain the same tone, the same composure, the same distance. She may even try to convince herself that your withdrawal means nothing. But underneath that calm exterior, something far more intense begins to grow. An emotional pressure she can't easily push down. Your pullback creates space, and space to a woman is never neutral. It's a signal, it's a shift, it's a psychological event that forces her mind to respond. She starts questioning things she never questioned before. She starts replaying moments she didn't analyze before. She starts noticing your absence in ways she didn't expect before. Why? Because her brain is wired to respond to changes in emotional patterns, and your pullback is a disruption she can't ignore. This is where her emotions begin working against her logic. She may think she's in control. She may think she's the one maintaining distance. She may think her silence gives her the upper hand. But when you pull back, that illusion breaks. She feels the shift. She senses the imbalance. She recognizes often for the first time the emotional value you brought into her life. And the more centered you remain, the deeper she feels it. Because your pullback doesn't represent rejection. It represents strength. It represents self-worth. It represents a man who doesn't need validation to feel whole. And there's nothing more psychologically powerful to a woman than a man who doesn't lose himself when she becomes unpredictable. This video will reveal the hidden emotional reactions she experiences the moment you step back. The confusion she hides, the fear she suppresses, the desire she didn't plan to feel, and the psychological shift that makes her see you differently, more clearly, more intensely, and more respectfully. If you've ever wondered what she really feels when you pull back, get ready, because the truth will surprise you. Before we start, a quick reminder: the real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood, a private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits, just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once. Grow forever. Let's dive in. Section 1. The immediate shock. Her mind tries to hide. When you pull back, the first thing she feels isn't anger. And it's not indifference. It's shock. Not dramatic shock, not visible shock, but an internal jolt that disrupts her emotional rhythm. Because whether she admits it or not, she had grown accustomed to the attention, consistency, and emotional presence you were giving her. Even if she acted uninterested, even if she claimed she didn't want anything serious, even if she maintained a cold or neutral exterior, your presence was something she relied on without realizing it. So when you pull back, her mind experiences a sudden gap in the emotional pattern. Women feel emotional shifts faster and deeper than men, and this shift is immediate. But here's the important part. She will not show it. She will not text you instantly. She will not chase right away. She will not collapse into confession. Instead, she hides the shock behind composure. But underneath that surface, her nervous system begins scanning for answers. The shock stems from one psychological truth. She expected you to stay predictable. Whether intentionally or unconsciously, she assumed you would keep giving energy while she kept evaluating. She assumed she could control the pace, the distance, the level of vulnerability. She assumed she had emotional leverage, but your pullback shatters that assumption. Suddenly, she is no longer the one studying you. You are now the one she has to figure out. This shift creates a quiet panic, not the chaotic kind, but the soft internal kind that whispers questions she can't silence. Did he lose interest? Why did he change? Was I too distant? Did I push him away? These questions don't appear because she's weak. They appear because you've interrupted her emotional certainty, and emotional certainty is everything to a woman. The immediate shock also forces her into hyper-awareness. She becomes more sensitive to your actions, your timing, your silence, your presence, or lack of it. She notices when you stop watching her stories. She notices when you stop texting first. She notices when your tone shifts from warm to centered. She notices the absence of your validation, even if she acted like she didn't need it. But the most powerful part of this shock is that it exposes something she didn't want to face. She cared more than she was showing. Your pullback becomes a mirror reflecting back her own hidden emotions, and that's why she tries so hard to hide her reaction. She doesn't want you to see the emotional impact you suddenly gained. She doesn't want you to realize that your absence hit harder than she expected. She doesn't want you to know that the control she believed she had just slipped away quietly. This shock is the beginning of a deeper emotional unraveling. It's the first crack in the armor. It's the moment she stops assuming your attention is guaranteed and starts wondering how she lost the certainty she once had. And once this shock settles, something even more powerful begins: her curiosity. Section 2. The curiosity that starts to consume her. After the initial shock fades, something stronger and far more revealing begins to rise inside her. Curiosity. This isn't the playful kind of curiosity she feels towards someone new. This is emotional curiosity, the kind that grows quietly, intensifies with time, and becomes almost impossible for her to silence. Because when you pull back, you introduce a question into her mind she cannot answer instantly, and the female mind hates unanswered emotional questions. Curiosity appears because she expected predictability, and you broke the pattern. Instead of chasing, you shifted inward. Instead of explaining, you stayed silent. Instead of demanding attention, you reclaimed your energy. And now she's left to unravel a mystery she didn't see coming. What changed? What is he thinking? Why is he so calm? Is he over me? Is there someone else? These questions don't appear because she's insecure. They appear because she's human, and humans obsess over the things they can't fully understand. Curiosity also grows because your pullback changes her emotional lens. When you were always available, she evaluated you through convenience. She analyzed your behavior with comfort. She took your presence as a given. But now she must evaluate you through uncertainty. And uncertainty creates depth. When a man pulls back respectfully, he suddenly becomes harder to categorize, harder to predict, harder to control, and that makes him infinitely more interesting. Another reason curiosity intensifies is because your silence forces her to pay attention to the emotional details she once ignored. She revisits your conversations mentally. She examines every interaction as if studying it under a microscope. She notices the moments where your energy changed, even if she denied it at the time. She looks for clues. She searches for explanations. She becomes emotionally invested in understanding your withdrawal. This curiosity is not temporary. It grows each day. You remain grounded because the female mind is wired to resolve emotional contradictions. If your pullback contradicts the version of you she assumed she understood, her mind becomes obsessed with solving the puzzle. Curiosity also becomes more intense when she realizes something unexpected. You're not suffering without her. This is where everything shifts. When she sees that your life continues, your mood stays stable, your focus remains strong, and your presence doesn't diminish, something inside her wakes up. She realizes you were never dependent on her attention. You simply enjoyed the connection while it was healthy. And now that you've stepped back, she must reassess her entire perception of you. And here's the key: curiosity is not passive, it is active. It moves her, it shifts her emotions, it motivates her to act. The more she wonders about you, the more invested she becomes. The more invested she becomes, the more she starts to feel you emotionally. The more she feels you, the deeper the connection becomes, even in silence. When curiosity takes over, you're no longer the man she evaluates. You become the man she studies. Section 3. The fear she tries to rationalize away. As her curiosity intensifies, another emotion begins creeping in beneath the surface. An emotion she will never admit out loud, not to you and not even to herself at first. It's fear. Not fear of losing you immediately, but fear of losing something she didn't realize mattered to her this much. Fear that your pullback means something real. Fear that the connection was more fragile than she assumed. Fear that she miscalculated her influence over you. This fear doesn't arrive suddenly. It grows slowly as she processes the silence you've created. And it grows deeper because you haven't reacted, haven't chased, haven't tried to pull her back toward you. The lack of your reaction is what magnifies her internal reaction. Her fear begins as a quiet whisper, then becomes a steady inner dialogue she tries to rationalize away with logic. She tells herself you might just be busy. She tells herself you're giving her space. She tells herself you're focusing on yourself. She tells herself it's not personal. But beneath those explanations, a heavier emotional truth exists. Your pullback forced her to confront the possibility that you may no longer be energetically tied to her, that your emotional investment wasn't as unconditional as she once believed, and that you are capable of walking away with composure if something no longer aligns with your standards. This fear deepens because women are highly attuned to changes in emotional patterns. The sudden absence of your familiar energy disrupts the psychological safety she didn't realize she had with you. Even if she wasn't fully invested, she felt secure in your consistent presence. Now that security is gone, replaced by uncertainty that gnaws at her quietly. She wonders if you're losing interest, if you met someone new, if something about her behavior pushed you away. These questions generate emotional tension she cannot fully control. Your silence becomes the canvas on which she paints her fears, doubts, and insecurities. And the more she tries to reason them away, the harder they cling to her mind. What makes this fear even more powerful is that it creates a sense of emotional contrast. When you were present, she clarity. When you pull back, she feels the sharpness of your absence. The brain remembers contrast far more intensely than consistency. It's not your presence she suddenly obsesses over. It's the loss of it. And this loss activates the part of her psychology that begins to crave resolution, reconnection, or reassurance. She doesn't want to admit that she cares, but the depth of her fear reveals exactly that. This fear also brings her into a state of emotional self-reflection. She re-examines her own actions, her tone, her behavior, and the moments where she may have taken you for granted. She tries to convince herself she didn't make a mistake. Even while sensing that she might have, she begins to recognize that losing a man who can pull back without breaking is very different from losing a man who collapses under emotional tension. One is replaceable, the other is not. Your pullback didn't create her fear, it revealed it. And once fear shows up, her emotional narrative changes completely. Suddenly, it's no longer about whether you still want her. It becomes a deeper question she can't escape. Does she still have access to you, or did you silently pass the point of return? Section 4, the ego shift that forces her to pay attention. As her fear grows beneath the surface, another powerful psychological transformation begins: the ego shift. This is one of the most crucial but least understood reactions a woman experiences when a man pulls back. At first, when you were fully available, her ego sat comfortably. She felt admired, desired, secure in her influence. She didn't need to think deeply because your attention created emotional certainty. But when your pullback interrupts that pattern, her ego is forced into a position it was not prepared to handle. She begins feeling a loss of control, and that loss becomes the spark that pushes her from passive observation into active awareness. The ego thrives on predictability. It likes knowing someone will respond, care, initiate, and remain accessible. Your consistency fed her ego. She may not have asked for it, but she benefited from it. Yet, when you pull back, the ego feels deprived of something it believed it owned, your emotional availability. This deprivation does not necessarily come from romantic feelings. It comes from the disruption of her internal hierarchy. She can no longer assume she holds a central position in your emotional world. And that realization destabilizes her ego in a way she cannot ignore. This shift also intensifies because your pullback is silent. You didn't announce it. You didn't explain it. You didn't justify it. Silence leaves the ego without a clear narrative, and without a narrative, it creates its own. She begins interpreting your new distance as strength. She reconsiders how she categorized you. She questions her assumptions about how much power she actually held over the connection. This ego recalibration is uncomfortable but transformative. It forces her to pay attention not to the man she assumed you were, but to the man you are revealing yourself to be. Her ego begins feeling challenged, and challenge triggers engagement. She becomes hyper-aware of your movements, your presence, your timing. She watches your stories to gauge your mood. She examines your tone if you do speak. She wonders if she's losing emotional ground. This attention is not merely curiosity. It's her ego trying to understand how it lost the comfort of certainty. The moment a woman's ego feels destabilized, she can no longer treat the situation passively. She is compelled to think, to evaluate, and to consider her next steps with far more emotional intensity. What makes this ego shift so powerful is that it acts as a doorway. When a woman's ego is challenged in this way, she becomes more emotionally open, more reflective, and more sensitive to the possibility that she misjudged the connection. The shift pushes her away from assumptions and toward recognition. Recognition of your value, of your self-control, and of the fact that you are no longer orbiting her emotional universe. This shift isn't about her losing pride. It's about her gaining clarity. She sees now that your attention had meaning. She sees that your consistency was a form of investment, not weakness. She sees that your pullback is not petty, it's powerful. And these realizations begin to erode the emotional wall she once held up so easily. She starts to understand that if she wants to remain part of your world, she can no longer rely on the comfort of you always being there. Your pullback didn't damage her ego. It awakened it. And in that awakening, she can no longer ignore the truth that you are a man whose value demands effort. Section 5. The growing desire to reclaim emotional balance. As her ego shifts and the emotional shock settles, she begins to feel something she didn't expect, an increasing internal desire to restore the emotional balance that your pullback disrupted. This desire is subtle at first, almost hidden beneath layers of pride and rationalization. She may tell herself she doesn't care. She may pretend she is fine. She may even act more distant to protect her image. But underneath it all, a quiet longing begins to develop. The longing to regain the connection she once felt secure about. This desire emerges because human psychology is wired to crave equilibrium. When emotional dynamics shift dramatically, the mind naturally seeks to restore balance. And since your pullback created an imbalance she wasn't emotionally prepared for, she becomes increasingly aware of the gap between how things were and how things are now. This awareness grows into a need for resolution, an inner pull to understand what happened, what changed, and what she must do to bring the connection back to a place of stability. But here's the interesting part. The desire to restore emotional balance is not rooted in her wanting control again. It's rooted in her realizing the value of what she lost. She begins to feel the absence of the emotional presence you used to bring. She misses the comfort of your warmth, the steadiness of your attention, and the familiarity of your presence. She may not admit it, but she feels the emotional void your silence created, and that void becomes the motivation for her next move. This desire intensifies because your pullback demonstrates emotional self-sufficiency. You didn't collapse. You didn't chase. You didn't argue. You didn't rush to fix things. Instead, you stayed steady within yourself. This creates a powerful image of you in her mind, an image of a man who does not rely on external validation to maintain emotional stability, and that image is attractive in a way she cannot ignore. It touches something deep inside her feminine psychology, something that compels her toward men who lead themselves with maturity and strength. As this desire grows, she begins evaluating her own behavior in a more honest light. She recognizes moments when she may have taken your consistency for granted. She notices the contrast between your past presence and your current distance. She begins acknowledging the emotional comfort she lost. This self-awareness pushes her to consider whether she wants to continue down the path of disconnection or whether she wants to take steps toward reconnection. And this is where desire begins transitioning into action. She may start giving you subtle signals, liking a post, responding quicker than before, initiating small conversations, or finding excuses to reach out. These actions may seem insignificant on the surface, but they are the early signs that her emotional desire is translating into real-world movement. She is trying to rebalance the dynamic without fully revealing her vulnerability. The deeper truth is this: when a woman feels the desire to restore emotional balance, it means she feels something meaningful. Pulling back did not push her away. It pulled her inward into her own emotional honesty. And once she enters that space, she not only wants the connection back, she begins to feel responsible for sustaining it. Section 6. The moment she starts trying to reconnect without admitting it. Once her desire to restore emotional balance grows strong enough, she enters a new psychological phase, one where she begins trying to reconnect with you, but without openly admitting that this is exactly what she's doing. This is the stage where her actions speak louder than her words, where her behavior becomes subtly intentional, and where her emotional investment shifts from passive to active. She won't say, "I miss you," and she won't confess, "Your pullback is affecting me." But her energy will reveal everything. Her first instinct isn't to be direct. Instead, she tests the waters. She uses small, seemingly insignificant actions to gauge whether you're still emotionally open. She might view your stories consistently, like your content, or re-engage with things she previously ignored. These micro-behaviors are not random. They're carefully chosen signals designed to reveal your state without exposing her vulnerability. She wants to see whether you still notice her, whether your silence is soft or final, and whether you still hold emotional space for her. As these subtle attempts become ineffective at soothing her curiosity, she escalates. She may send a casual message, something neutral and easy to deny. "Hey, how have you been?" Or "I saw something today that reminded me of you." These messages are not about the content. They are about the emotional doorway they open. She is testing if she can re-enter your world without admitting that she feels the absence of your presence. If you respond warmly but calmly, she feels relief. If you remain composed and measured, her attraction intensifies because she sees you as grounded, not desperate. She may also begin showing you a different tone, softer, more attentive, more considerate. Women rarely shift their tone for a man unless they feel something meaningful. That shift is a sign that your pullback recalibrated her emotions. She now understands that the connection is no longer one-sided. You are no longer the constant. You are the prize she must earn again. Another behavior she may exhibit is indirect jealousy. She becomes more alert to who interacts with you. She pays attention to whether you've become quieter or more active socially. She wonders if someone else has stepped into the emotional space she once occupied. This isn't possessiveness. It's awareness. Awareness that emotional opportunity is never guaranteed. Awareness that you are not waiting around. Awareness that she could genuinely lose something valuable. And then without realizing it, she enters a deeper emotional state. Readiness. Readiness to be more vulnerable. Readiness to be more honest. Readiness to open the conversation she avoided before. This readiness often manifests in her asking deeper questions, expressing concern, or showing genuine interest in your life again. She no longer wants clarity about your attention. She wants clarity about your feeling. This shift happens because your pullback forced her to sit with emotions she would have never explored otherwise. Your pullback didn't make her chase blindly. It made her reconnect authentically, not from ego, not from fear, but from emotional recognition. When she starts trying to reconnect without admitting it, it means the connection has already been revived inside her mind. Your silence simply gave her the space to see it clearly. Shortly when you pull back, it may feel like you're stepping into uncertainty. It may feel like you're risking the connection. It may feel like you're giving up control. But the truth is far more powerful than you imagine, because the moment you shift your energy inward, calmly, quietly, intentionally, you activate a psychological chain reaction inside her that cannot be stopped, denied, or hidden. You force her to confront the emotional weight of your presence, the value of your attention, and the stability of the connection she once treated casually. Your pullback exposes what her words never would. It reveals how deeply your presence impacted her. It shows her whether she truly values the connection or whether she was simply comfortable in the safety of your effort. It tests her emotional clarity, her maturity, and her willingness to participate in something meaningful. Throughout this process, she experiences the shock of losing emotional certainty, the curiosity that grows stronger each day, the fear that she may have misjudged your intentions, the ego shift that forces her to reevaluate her assumptions, and the desire to restore the balance she disrupted. She begins trying to reconnect in subtle ways, testing your energy, reaching out softly, observing your movements, hoping to sense whether the door is still open. And deep within all of this, the most important transformation occurs. She becomes honest with herself. Your pullback is not punishment. It is revelation. It is clarity. It is the moment where her emotional truth rises to the surface, no longer hidden behind pride, assumptions, or ego. And when a woman reaches the final stage, when she finally understands why your silence affected her so deeply, her entire perception of you changes. She no longer sees you as the man who was always available. She sees you as the man who knows his worth, the man who does not chase validation, the man who can walk away from anything that falls below his standards, the man she cannot manipulate, test, or destabilize. That kind of man is rare. That kind of man is unforgettable. That kind of man commands respect and effortlessly attracts love. So remember this, pulling back is not about playing games. It is about protecting your value. It is about refusing to pour into someone who is not pouring